Hi, my name's Tristan, and I'm the host of the Gravel Cycling Australia podcast. I was born, raised, and continue to live, work, and ride my bike on the lands of the Wurundjeri and the Wadawurrung people. I acknowledge the Wurundjeri people as the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast is recorded, and pay my respects to their elders past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. The Gravel Cycling Australia podcast acknowledges that Aboriginal sovereignty has never been ceded. It always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Welcome to the Gravel Cycling Australia podcast. Gravel cycling in Australia is booming. From racing to bikepacking to simply getting off the beaten track and exploring the backroads and trails of our outstanding natural landscapes. This accessible subculture is all about community, adventure, and discovering or rediscovering the joy of life on two wheels. Join us as we celebrate Australia's gravel cycling scene and discover the locations, explore the events, and meet the people at the heart of the sport. Welcome back to the Gravel Cycling Australia podcast. We're taking a real deep dive into gravel racing. We're heading into gravel racing season in Australia now, and we've started to have a few big events on the calendar. We heard from Biker to Balladoo Gravel a couple of weeks ago, and we've just had the big Gravelista UCI qualifying event up in Beechworth over the last weekend, and we'll talk a bit about that later today as well. But yeah, today's focus is really looking forward to what is perhaps Australia's biggest gravel race, the Dirty Warrny. So we're into our second year now of the Dirty Warrny, and yeah, really excited to have Jethro Nagle from the Press Room podcast on today to help us do a bit of a deep dive into the upcoming event and have a look at the Dirty Warrny in a bit more detail. Yeah, to see what makes this event so special. So we'll take a look at the course, the contenders, and a bit about the event itself, and sort of have a bit of a deeper discussion about the future of gravel racing and the position of this race in particular in Australia's gravel racing scene. Before we get to that, just wanted to give a shout out to Trekkie Johnson and Tasman Nankervis and all the other guys and girls who've been participating in the Lifetime Grand Prix. The last event wrapped up a couple of weeks ago, and Trekkie put in an absolute monster performance to come in second overall at Big Sugar Gravel. He was the first Lifetime Grand Prix finisher there, and that meant that he ended up 7th overall in that series, which is, yeah, just a phenomenal effort from Trekkie and really showing what an elite talent he is on the world stage. Just before we get into the Dirty Warrny talk, I just wanted to give a little bit of an update on the bike situation. As you know, I had a bit of a traumatic incident a couple of weeks ago. I had the bike up on the Toolay 591 bike rack on the roof of the car, and yeah, forgot about it, drove straight into my carport roof and written off the bike, unfortunately. So yeah, still having to think about the next move from the bike situation. But whilst I do, the guys at Simpatico, a brand new bike brand based here in Melbourne, they're doing beautiful titanium bikes. Yeah, they got in touch and they've got a few demos that they've just built up. So yeah, they've lent me one for a few weeks, which is pretty special. I just had my first ride out on it the other day. Yeah, it's an absolutely beautiful machine. And if you want to see that, tune into the socials, and yeah, you can get some updates on the Simpatico N1. So it's sort of positioning itself as a real racy gravel bike, quite racy geometry, room for 45mm tyres. And yeah, it's a really fun ride. I'll continue to provide a bit of an update on how that bike's going, and yeah, hopefully produce a little bit more content about it. Wanted to give a shout out as well to the guys at Toolay Australia. So Daniel, he saw the Instagram story that I'd popped up online about how I'd shattered the Toolay roof rack as well as the bike, and yeah, he reached out and yeah, was an absolute legend. He offered to send me a brand new bike rack, and yeah, they've got me back on my feet, no questions asked. So yeah, just wanted to acknowledge Toolay. I've been using their products for a long time. I've got a roof box I use whenever I go away with the family, and yeah, I'd had no issues at all with my Toolay 591. It was always a great piece of kit. But yeah, really excited to have a new bike rack. So I've popped that one up on the car this morning. Really easy to set up, really easy to use. So yeah, we'll get the Simpatico up on there tonight and then head down to the Otways this afternoon, which will be really exciting. Going to do some riding around. Might even get on some of the roads that'll be used in the upcoming Dirty Warrny. Do a bit of a recon, see what condition they're in, and can report back on that as well. So yeah, shout out to Simpatico Bikes and Thule Australia for helping me out in this real traumatic time of need. All right, that's enough from me. Let's get into our chat with Jethro and do a real deep dive onto what is Australia's gravel monument, the Dirty Warrny. So really excited to have Jethro Nagle on the podcast this week. Many of you probably know Jethro from his work on the Press Room podcast or maybe his work at gravel racing around the country. He's a renowned commentator and race announcer and also does a bit of work for SBS on the side. So Jethro, thanks for joining us on the Gravel Cycling Australia podcast.
Love it. Hey, Tristan. It's good, mate. Good to be on the podcast. In fact, I don't think I've ever been on one before, to be honest, which is probably surprising. But
other than your own, of course, you've got about 70 episodes now.
Yeah, 86 actually. 86. Yep. So it's been a few, and I listened to every one.
For people who aren't aware of your podcast, you interview professional racers from mainly the road, but also increasingly gravel cyclists as well.
Yeah. So all the sort of World Tour, Women's World Tour professionals. I interview, definitely, if you haven't listened to it before, there'll be a rider on there that you'd be interested in hearing from. And also sometimes team staff as well, like nutritionists or DSs, team owners, and just like notable cycling people. But I've got a real big passion for gravel cycling, gravel racing. So I do try and get a few gravel cyclists or gravel episodes in there as well. When did
gravel sort of come into your life?
Oh, well, I've been following the gravel racing since it started, like, to getting a bit of uproar in the US, like probably 7 years ago. I started hearing about or reading about on the cycling news websites back when they were a thing. And I started seeing this stuff about, the original Dirty Kansas, which is Unbound's original name before they renamed it. I think it's a derogatory Native American term, so I changed it. But I started seeing all this stuff and seeing the news about that and the Belgian waffle rides. And I loved looking up and reading about all of that sort of stuff. And I've been following every gravel event that's surfaced since then. So probably like 2018, 2017 maybe.
And you're a racing cyclist by background, that's right? You've raced your bike?
Oh, I race my bike, yeah. I'm no good, but I love racing. I love it. But I'm one of the very few people, I think, who love racing, even if they're shithouse. Like, I'm just your bog standard rider, and I don't train like I used to anymore, but I still race. It just means, not really good, but I love it. Cyclocross, road racing, a filthy town crit. What else? Like, yes, as I say, cyclocross, gravel cycling. Yeah, I mean, anything. I'll race. I'll race you on the paths.
That's so good. I think I think most gravel cyclists who do these mass participation events, they definitely got that in them. But the reality is really they're just weekend warriors. I think when I did the GOG earlier this year, I definitely feel like you're in the Tour de France for 5 minutes, but then you realise you haven't got the watts. So.
Yeah.
So I got you. I asked you to come on today because we've got perhaps one of the biggest gravel racing events in the country coming up in a couple of weeks, the Dirty Warrny. And I know you were involved in the race last year, and you put on a pretty excellent highlights package on YouTube. So if anyone wants to pop on there and see the highlights, and I just wanted to get you on and sort of get a bit of an insider's take on the event and look forward to this year to see what we're looking forward to on the 11th of November. So as a start, can you run us through a bit of the history of this particular event and how you got involved?
Well, the Dirty Warrny we're placing it as Australia's gravel monument. And it is. It's 246 Ks, the long distance. There's a 140 and there's an 84 distance as well, if 240 is a bit too far, which it is for most people. But I was working on the Melbourne Warrny the last couple of years, and the Melbourne Warrnable race committee actually own the Dirty Warrny. It's their product, and KSJ, so KSJ Events, Karen Jones, she is the person running that and delivering the event. She's obviously one of the best in the business. So that's how my link came into working on this race. Yeah, so I guess with gravel rising and the really amazing network of gravel roads from Geelong to Warrnambool and all throughout Victoria. Yeah, they thought, let's put on an epic race. And I think it's also maybe a bit of a safety net as well for the Melbourne Warrnambool, which is in the last few years has been harder to organise, just more expensive. And that at a road racing event of that level is tough, because really only the elite, the top end, can really get the most out of that kind of event. But when you swap it to a gravel event, you have a 250k road event. Sounds good if you're a reasonable cyclist, but a 250k gravel event sounds fun, even if you're rubbish and you're slow, or you're 100 years old, or you've just had kids, you want to get back into cycling, whatever. You're out in these amazing scenes. So especially from WA, when I drove the entire course last year, obviously filming it and stuff, incredible scenes. So I think the reason why this race exists is because the trails are there. People want to do these types of events, and it's a ripper. Yeah,
I've been trying to wrap my head around what it is about this particular event that's really seems to have captured the sort of the imagination of particularly the racing community. Like we've had mass participation gravel events going for a few years now in Australia. Some of them have got quite established now, whereas this is sort of a newer event. We had the first running last year, obviously. So yeah, I've been trying to wrap my head why this event in particular has become sort of the gravel monument, as you say. And I think that's probably, like what you said there, was a good place to start. Like the fact that it's run by the Melbourne to Warrnambool organisers, and it's sort of positioning itself perhaps slightly differently. It's got more of a focus maybe on that top end elite racing than you'd get at some of these other sort of grassroots events. Would you say that's sort of a fair assessment?
Well, maybe. I mean, it definitely appeals to the top end, men and women who really want to test themselves, because it's such a long race. You're never going to win it by accident. You're not going to get lucky and slip into a breakaway or something and win the race like you can sometimes do in shorter races. If you win the 250k 9-hour bike race, it's because you're the best rider there on the start list. It doesn't matter, and the luckiest. But I would say the event is still more aimed at the recreational group, only because, well, when you look at any start list, the main bulk of any entry start list is recreational people. Most people are not there to try and win the race. They're just there to challenge themselves. And a 9-hour bike ride on gravel, on hills, tricky terrain, that's challenging for everyone. It's challenging to get the fueling right. Is your bike going to hang on? Many of them probably haven't ridden 7 hours on the bike. That's my cat, by the way. So it's like that challenge. Can I do it?
Yeah, I guess that was my other theory, right? Like it's just longer than anything else we've got in the country.
And you're intrigued, right?
And it's the biggest challenge that you can sign up for, I think.
Yeah, and it's like that Three Peaks event. To me, I hear about that Three Peaks over here so many. I hear it all the time. It's something I actually want to do because it sounds epic, and we don't have an event like that over here, not to that length and not to that amount of challenge, with the amount of vert in it. And I'm sitting here going, God, I'd love to go and do that because it sounds bloody hard, and I don't know if I could do it. But deep down I know I could, but I don't know. So, well, Mr. Earl's going crazy. That's
got a flash of Jethro's cat across
Mr. Earl.
Zoom call there.
So, the beauty of the gravel event, as it draws in, and this one in particular, it draws in the top guys and girls who want to compete and tell everyone that they are, the top end of the sport, and it gets the recreational people who want that challenge. Road is different because if you get shelled in a bike race on the road because you're not up to speed and you're not good, that sucks. You're riding on your own on the road. That's no fun. But if you get dropped from your group in a gravel race, you're on your own, sure, okay, for now, but you're in the forest. You're on beautiful trails. It's fun. I think it's the difference.
I heard last week the Bicycle Network, you mentioned the Three Peaks there. I think they've got a survey out at the moment asking people about their interest in gravel events because, I think the word on the street was they're seeing a little bit of a drop-off in the participation in Three Peaks and their other big event around the Bay here in Melbourne. So, I think there's definitely that appetite to move these mass participation events onto the gravel. So something to look out for there. But
that's interesting. I'm not surprised, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're talking a little bit about this race's position in the gravel scene. I think it's fair to say that this is Australia's premier gravel race for all those reasons that we've discussed. And I think, would you say that this is sort of the closest thing that we've got to this big US gravel scene in Australia as well? Sort of that epic distance, sort of big challenge. But then you've also got that, the racing at the front and the party at the back sort of attitude.
Yeah. Oh, no, it definitely is. It's the closest thing to what we could emulate over in the US. And I think it's really good. I think it's good that we've got something like that because, for example, the UCI qualifiers that we have here, Seven and Gravelista and all the other sort of events, gravel events are around that 3.5 hour mark at maximum in terms of the effort. But when you put in 6, 7, 8 hours for an event, it makes it monumental, and everyone's like, whoa, we don't have many of those races or at all. So who wins? So it creates a really good atmosphere. And I think that's why this event is one of the ones I'm excited for the most, because we've had a whole year of gravel cycling here in Australia. And for those who have been racing in the US and Europe, who are back here. And now we've just got okay, we've seen everyone winning here, podium there, this new person rising up. Now we've got the last big race. So who wins, and that narrative is super exciting.
Yeah, it is, definitely. All right, let's have a look at the course. As you said, it's long. There's a few distance options. You can do the full 246 kilometres. So that's 84% gravel, over 3,000 metres of elevation gain. Runs from Mount Moriac all the way through to Warrnambool. So that one is, as I said, 246. And then there's a couple of shorter options. You can pick up the course at Forest in the feet of the Otways there. So that is a 140k run from Forest into Warrnambool with 1,415 metres of elevation gain. Or they've introduced a newer shorter distance this year, just running the 84Ks from Timboon through to Warrnambool. And that one's pretty flat, a bit more tarmac in that one, 65% gravel and 772 metres of elevation gain. But I think the real focus is on this feature race, the 246. So I noticed a change in start location this year. Any particular reason for that? We were at Mount Dunedin State last year and we're just up the road at Mount Moriac.
Oh, right. I didn't even know that. Damn, I was looking forward to
hitting the wines again at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Well, actually, yeah, they didn't really have many snacks at the start there. I thought there'd be a few snacks with the coffee machine, but I was actually a little bit disappointed because I rolled in. There was a couple of light pastries. I was thinking there'd be a little smorgasbord, but that's my selfish reason. But Mount Moriac Recreational Reserve sounds good to me.
So the premier race will roll out at 6:30 a.m. in the morning, and I think the initial parts of the race are sort of rolling roads through the outskirts of Geelong, predominantly gravel through there, and then the course sort of skirts around the back of the Anglesea Heath, for those of you familiar with that sort of surf coast area, and then we head into the foothills of the Otway Ranges, which is where the climbing really starts. So the course sort of heads up, wraps around the Wensleydale plantations at Bamborough there, and then drops down again into Deans Marsh, a lovely little town there in the Otway foothills. Yes. You picked up a scone at the store last year there, Jethro, did you?
Oh yes, that's a place to go. Yeah, epic.
Yeah, if you're ever in the area in Deans Marsh, the store there in the centre of town, they're very accommodating of gravel cyclists in particular. I think the outgoing owner was a keen gravel cyclist himself. So pop in there if you're ever in the area. But I'm sure the riders will be storming straight through Deans Marsh because straight after then we hit the biggest climb of the day. So this is the Cervelo KOM Queen of the Mountain Point as well, up to the top of Mount Cowley. So is this sort of where the race really kicked off from your perspective?
A little bit. It was, I remember going up the climb. I was driving up it. Last year I was following Connor Sands, who's the national gravel champ in the men's this year. He was solo with Jack Aiken at the time. I was following behind them. And tough climb. But I'm pretty sure by the time you get there, you've already done 150 Ks. So any climb that's 15 or 12 to 15 minutes for the super fast guys and girls, 12, 15 minutes long, after 150 Ks, if you definitely get to see the effects of that, whereas if it was in the first 15 minutes. But Yeah, I mean, that's a beautiful climb. It's tough too. There's some real steep moments in that course, especially at the start, but then it's, pretty nice terrain, pretty nice surface. Over in WA, if you're on a climb of that length, you'd be chopping and changing from left to right, trying to find a line that you can ride on versus that climb is beautiful. You can ride almost four across it, but they won't be doing that. So, yeah, that's definitely the moment. And probably, I think it'd be pretty decisive for the women's race as well because, in the men, sure, they're sort of at the front teeing off, but sort of in the second and third groups on the road, you'll have your lead women, and they'll often be in a group of sort of the 20th to 35th sort of positioned men. So they'll be in a group of two or three in those groups, and they kind of, they'll probably be able to go up the climb faster than the group they're in, but likely they'll need that group of riders with them to help them work throughout the race if they've got maybe their competitor behind and the group behind. So you got to play it smart on the women's side. You can't drop all the blokes you've been working with in the last few moments. When you got the climb, you kind of got to nurse them up there, and then hopefully you can continue to work together. So there's really two different types of races here, but no doubt the climb's going to be, it'll definitely eliminate some riders.
Yeah, it's a really good point that you don't want to be going solo from too far out in this event, because after that QOM, we're descending down again into Forest, another stunning little town. That one nestled right in the middle of the big Otway trees, and then from there's an extended rolling section across the Otways just south of Colac, and then the terrain changes a bit. We head out of the Otways and then back into farming country through Simpson, across the Heytesbury rolling hills, a lot of dairy cows down there, and then through Timboon before hitting a long, flat, deadly straight run into Warrnambool. Having a look at the map, it looks like a pretty technical little finish there at the foreshore. Is that right? Like, it seems like it'd be a tough place to have a sprint finish.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. If you're spectating at the end, fantastic. I'll make sure everybody knows when we're expecting the riders to come in because I'll zip to the finish in time. But, it's super technical. It's almost like maybe if anyone's done a grass cyclocross course, it's kind of like when you're, a part of a section in your grass CX course, you'll have a real sort of twisty on, sort of comes back on each other, the course. So that's kind of what it's like the last sort of 150 meters. So I think they go over this little bridge and then basically first in wins, really. Yeah, first into that little tricky section wins, but it's good for the finish line because it's such a good finishing village for an event that you can see all that. So it'd be really cool bit of theatre if there's a group.
Yeah, so as I said, you don't want to be going solo from too far out because it is a real long, flat drag from Timboon into Warrnambool there. So, it'd be interesting to see how'd that section play out last year. I think Trekkie and Mark O'Brien were in a group there, weren't they, heading into Warrnambool together?
They were, but they had to catch Jensen Plowright first, he went when Jack Aiken and Connor Sands attacked at kilometre 0, they were away. Jensen Plowright was behind them. He attacked later on and he actually bridged across to them and then basically rode them off the wheel at kilometre 200. So for a long time there, Jensen was actually out solo on his own in front with only like 30 Ks to go. And then he blew up and then, Marco and Trekkie caught him. But people forget Jensen was flying and he didn't have his last feed bag. There's something happened. He stuffed it up because I was at the last feed zone. I zipped across to see him there and he was yelling out as he coming through. It was like a F1 pit stop. He was like, FDJ jersey, because back then he was riding for them and he'd wrapped his bottles up and all his nutrition for that last stop at, kilometre 180, whatever it was, the last feed zone, and couldn't find it anywhere. And he didn't even look. He didn't even look that long. And I was looking all over the table, nothing there. He just grabbed a handful of like gummy bears or whatever it was, lollies or something on the table, stuffed them in his jersey, and then he just left. So for the last 50K, he didn't have his feed and like he could have been on the edge then.
Yeah, I mean, in a race like this, you can't miss the feed, right? Like, that's just a death knell.
Yeah.
I think I saw that on an Instagram story. It was made for good viewing, but yeah, I can't imagine he was too impressed.
Yeah, well, I think he actually had his phone with him at the time. And when he was out solo on the road section at like kilometre 220, he actually took his phone out and did a little Instagram story. And how the wheels fell off after
Oh
that.
dear.
What a guy.
So the rest stops there at Dean's Marsh, Forrest Simpson, and Tim Boone. So yeah, I think that story sort of highlights how important those pit stops can be in these long gravel races, because obviously you're unsupported all the way through. But yeah, you got your opportunity there to get some support from if you've got a crew to help, or you can drop your food bags ahead if you're not lucky enough to have a crew there to assist. So that could be an important part of the race as well. So it's obviously a long course for the everyday riders. Those looking just to finish, they've got a 14-hour cutoff, which seems generous, but still, that's a long day out on the bike, isn't it? 14 hours, 6:30 in the morning till 8:30 at night. So kudos to whoever comes in last.
We'll be waiting for you too, the whole event. We don't start packing up until every rider is through. And even last year, Jensen Plowright stayed the entire after he'd finished, and he waited. He was waving the flag in for the final riders. And I remember the guy that came in too, and there were some broken bodies coming in, like broken souls, just waltzing in.
When I get around to training up for this and giving it a go, I think it'll probably be me coming in at the 13-hour and 50-minute mark. Absolutely wrecked. Just on a personal note, this maybe part of the reason I get so into this course and keen definitely to try it one day is it's a bit of a route through my life history. I was born in Geelong, where the route starts. I lived at a property at Bamborough. My parents have a place there, and the race passes about 100 metres up the gate from there. And then I did my first gravel race at the GOG at Forest a couple of years ago, and then when I first got my first job after uni, I lived down in Simpson and Tim Boone for 3 or 4 years as well. So I've sort of tasted this whole route from start to finish without having actually ridden the bike through much of it. But yeah, it's one a bit close to my heart.
Yeah, no, you should be course director. You've got to do it next year. You can't tell me that story.
Yeah, I know. I think I'll have to train. New baby this year. I sort of thought about it, but she's 8 weeks old, and I think that wasn't going to be helpful for training 8 weeks out, having a new baby, getting about 3 hours sleep a night. But I reckon, next year we'll. If I say it on the podcast, I'll have to do it. So let's go with that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right, let's have a look at the contenders. We've mentioned a few big names there, but obviously there's age group categories in this event, but then the elite field on top. So as we've sort of said, this event attracts a really high caliber of elite athlete. So who have we got lining up in the men's? And maybe we'll do the men's first, and then have a look at the women.
Yeah, this is good. This is very exciting, right? We've got, there's a whole host of great bike riders going. I actually don't have the full start list. I didn't have time to get it today, but the main contenders, right? At least I like these 4. Of course, we've got Trekkie coming back, which is fantastic. He's had a massive season in the US and definitely proved himself of how good he is, because he is a sort of step above everyone here in Australia, and we've seen him do really well, obviously on the mountain bike, and I think he got a bit more attention when he started doing well in the road races at nationals the last few years. Really impressive. But, it stands out a bit more when you're the one non-World Tour rider in the final group sort of thing. And so I was really interested to see how Trekkie would go over in the US. And he kind of had a slow start. And in my head, I was thinking, if he gets everything right, he really should be inside that top 12, in those sorts of races. And depending on the course, parkour, and those sorts of things, then he can start entering, podium spots. And so he had a really good season, a slow start, but altitude takes a while to adjust, getting used to the racing as well. And the back half, he kind of showed, he is really good to compete for those podiums. So having Trekkie coming back is awesome. And he's defending champ.
Yes, as you say, he's been over in the US. He's been doing the Lifetime Grand Prix, for those of you unaware, along with Tasman, who we had on a few weeks ago. So, and then he's topped off his time over there with an excellent result at Big Sugar. Took out second overall in the race, and then, the first lifetime finisher. So, it'll be interesting to see how he goes.
Yeah, it really will. And Tasman, I wonder if he's racing. I did ask him earlier this year at 7. Afterwards, he's thinking about it. He also said, show me the money as well. Wanted some prize money. But who wouldn't? Then we've got Mark O'Brien's one who I think big chance. He just gets unlucky. He gets unlucky. And I think last year he was probably, a lot of the other boys said he was one of the strongest in their group. Like he was just a machine and he's got so much power. He got unlucky at Gravelista with like 5 punches, which is a shame because I gave him bib number 2 as well. Got him bib number 2 on the call up. Everyone must have been thinking, what are you doing? But those who know that Marco's a beast. And that climb as well. He got fastest up the KOM, so he smashed it. He went up there a minute faster than everyone else. Connor Sands, of course, the reigning gravel champion. Connor's fresh off the win, Gravelista. I actually thought Gravelista was a bit too short for him, 3.5 hours. I think Connor needs this is actually the race that probably suits him the most. A long race. So he's obviously going to be really good. I'm not sure, but I think I was talking to Torben Partridge Madsen after the race at Gravelista last week too. The gravel race in Beechworth. He's in good nick, and I hope he is racing. I think he is. So he'll be up there as well. And Jensen Plowright as well. He got taken out by a crash last week at Gravelista, and shout out to him. He stopped and helped this guy whose thumb got like sliced off. So it was a massive pile up. I think it was the one where Ollie Stenning went down, who's okay, by the way, but he was pretty messed up. And this guy cut his thumb off or something. And there was a doctor in that group as well, and Plowright, and they used like a spare tube and Jensen's glove to try and hold it all together, which apparently it worked. But that in the men's, that is, of those group, Trekkie is the hot favourite, the hot favourite. But what tends to happen in gravel racing in the men's side is a breakaway goes and they get given the leash because there's 246 kilometres, and then the favourites wait till a bit later in the race as it thins out, kilometre after kilometre, people drop off. They wait to make their move, and the key moment maybe at the climb, maybe before then, and then start to reel in and wind back in the breakaway as they start to fatigue from all the Ks out in the wind. But you can get it wrong. So if I was any rider in that sort of thinking you're in that maybe on 5th to 10th strongest in the field, my Lord, go in the breakaway. You must go at the start because everyone will be looking at Trekkie. They won't be looking at Connor, like they will be a little bit, and they'll look to Mark because he always works, but they'll look at Trekkie and be like, why am I pulling in this group of 6? If Trekkie's in this group, he's going to roll me. So the men's is exciting, Tristan.
Sounds good. Can't wait to see how it's going to play out. Are we going to get... Oh, maybe we'll come back to that. We'll come back to the
women's first.
Let's do the women.
This is exciting.
Yeah. Run us through it.
It's very exciting. Very exciting. I'm so excited about this, and because we've got a real nice group of women here that are super talented. Last year just wasn't as good because Courtney was really the only top challenger there. She destroyed everyone else. She was too good. Courtney was too good, and that's great seeing the best riders win. But you'd always rather see the best riders win and be challenged. All the best riders not win because they were challenged. And this year, we've got Courtney Sherwell, Matilda Reynolds, Cassia Boglio, Sarah Gigante signed up yesterday, so she got a bike. Fiona Morris is also going to be sniffing around there as well. Distance might be a bit too much. But in those top 4, I'm not sure if Sarah will properly race it, but, races are races. She'll turn up and have a crack. But Courtney, Matilda and Cassia, they are very close together in ability, and they each have their individual strengths. And so that was the podium of last weekend's UCI Gravel World Series qualifier for 2024 at Gravelista. So Courtney won by about a minute, back to Matilda and Cassia, who were 1, 2, 3. So they're all returning 2 weeks later to do double the distance. So anything can happen. And like this one will be really interesting because, like I've touched on before, the women's races, unfortunately, it's different to the men's. They don't get their own dedicated race, which kind of sucks, but it also has its benefits as well. It's just a different racing dynamic for the top elite women. They often they're in groups, so they might be in groups with each other and also with other men. So like that affects the racing dynamic. They're not launching out of a group of 10 with 8 guys, 2 girls maybe, and attacking the other woman in their group. They're not doing that because it just makes no sense. It's almost like basically who can hold on the longest, or who can ride and test their nerve and do all the sketchy bits with the front leaders, men leaders, who can ride at that high level, that high pace for longest and stay in the group. Because once you stay in that fast lead group, you're away, right? So skill level for the women's is probably more important than it is with the men's in terms of your race result. So really exciting, Tristan, of those 5. Yeah.
That makes it super tactical, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Has there been any discussion that you're aware of about trying to split the men's and women's? I know over in the Lifetime Grand Prix this year, there's been a bit of a move to start the elite men and then start the elite women sort of 5 minutes after that, and then have the sort of the everyday athletes go after the elite field. Any talk about that at any gravel events that you've been involved with here in Australia?
No, I don't think any gravel events in Australia have the resources to do that. They couldn't do another, it seems easy to say, oh, we'll just start the race for the women an hour or half an hour before or after sort of thing. But the race organisers have like strict road closures that are like to the minute, or they might have, police clearance for this time only, and the SAG wagons and all that stuff. And also just the depth of field. I actually don't think the women would even want to have their own race right now, because for the 246 kilometre, and that's just for this race. Other races it might be different, but for this race, the 246 kilometre in the women's, I'm pretty sure there's like maybe 15 or 20 in that group. And you know what I mean? Like that's a small group, and you do want to have a bigger field when you start to split it up, I think. It's like if you have over here in WA, big, massive within the women's community. If you had a crit and the B grade women had 1 rider or 2 riders on the start line, and there's 20 in 25 and C grade men, every single time without fail, those women will want to race with C grade men instead in a combined grade rather than race 2 up. Like that sucks, right? You want to be challenged and compete. So yeah, I think, as we get more numbers, bloody oath, I'd love to see a standalone event, because, when I'm making these videos, when I make these videos of the races, Tristan, I have 1 driver. I've got to be there at the start of the race, and I have to be there before the finish to call the riders through and call the finale and stuff. And that means I can't film the women's races in there because I have to stay with the start of the men's. I can't have a car back in the middle of the bunches and filter back, find the lead women's and follow them in these races, because I've got to go ahead to get to the finish in time, So if there were 2 separate races, that would be amazing, because then I could do sole women's footage, sole men's footage, And it literally, I hate making videos when I can't do both, but that's just the nature. So I try to do the best that I can,
Yeah, it's a bit of a catch-22, isn't it? Like, it'd be great to be able to showcase those elite women just as well as we can the men, and then maybe that'd stimulate more women to want to get involved in elite gravel racing, and then it'd help it grow. But yeah, it's a bit of a shame we don't get that opportunity. Just on coverage, how can, obviously this isn't a televised event or anything, it's a grassroots gravel race, but how can people follow along on the day if they are keen?
Well, there'll be a little bit of social media on Instagram, stories, that sort of stuff. But I do that for Dirty Warrny, so I probably won't be able to do that much. I'll do what I can. Just depends if I have a driver this year. Last year, I didn't have a driver for the car when I was out on course. I was driving. My driver got COVID the day before. So my filming I did was rubbish, because I was just getting out of the car, filming side, getting back in the car, driving ahead of the group. I couldn't. Usually I'll have someone driving and I'm hanging out of the car or hanging onto the tow bar, filming and getting cool footage. But this year, yeah, Instagram is probably the best way, Dirty Warrny Instagram. So definitely follow it. There's some cool videos on there. We'll share everything that we've got. But a lot of it will be post-race.
So after the race, you'll cut together a bit of a highlights package so everyone can get on YouTube and check it out? Yes,
I will. Yes. So like I mentioned, I didn't have a driver last year, so very difficult. This year I do have a driver. That driver now is also, it's 2 years in a row, COVID's got in the way.
Oh, no.
But I seriously, if there isn't a spare person to do the driving for me on the day, so I can really try and capture all the footage with all the cameras and stuff, I'm just going to pay someone to drive for the day. So I'll find out next week whether I've got a driver locked in or not. And if I don't, I'm just going to pay someone to do it. I'll just give them $200, say, just drive me around in front of the course. Because when you gravel racing coverage is difficult, the logistical challenges of covering these races because of the terrain they go on, because it's too narrow, too rocky, too hard for cars, vehicles, whatever, and also satellites, that sort of stuff, reception. But video is king. When you're trying to make your gravel race big and get people excited about it, video is king. It's the biggest way to reach the most amount of people. And the best example is like my 7 gravel race videos I've made. So you can look up 7 gravel race on YouTube and you'll see the ones. Yeah, I'm no master video maker. I'm not good at it at all, but always learning. But those videos they're like 15 minutes long, and they've, I think, combined last year's and the year before, or this year's and last year's combined as like 75,000 views. And it's a 15-minute video. I added up what it shows you on YouTube. You can add up the minutes viewed, and it's half a year of minutes viewed. So imagine if you're a sponsor of the gravel race and you've given them $5,000 to be the KOM sponsor or something like that, and you want your return on investment, and you've got your Instagram page with 5,000 followers, putting a story out or a post, tagging them, maybe 2,000 people see it, maybe 150 engage with that post. Cool. But what if you've got a video that's reached 60,000 people who've watched it for 15 minutes each, and your tagline on the bottom, now they're getting to the KOM, sponsored by Cervelo for the Queen of the Mountain, and Cervelo comes up, and then in the video, the Cervelo flags are there at the start of the King, Queen of the Mountains. Then not only are you showing the race to more people who get excited about it, go, I'm signing up next year, but also you can do a much better return on investment for sponsors who will then come back next year, which means you can do more things for the racing, make the entries cheaper, pay for the road closures, make more, build up more of a profit so you can come back next year.
Are we seeing that growth in these events? Like, you've been involved with some of these for a few years now. Are you seeing that growth there? Yeah,
I mean, the growth's there because the appetite for gravel racing is huge, and the tourism councils and bodies involved where the racing is, they're really keen, the ones that get it, to have the race in their region, because, that's definitely growing. When you've got a small town that's hosting the start or finish of a race, if you've got 300 people in there in your town, when usually you have 50 rolling through the streets, that's 300 people buying a coffee. 300 times 5. What's that? $1,500. Awesome. Okay. Then they might also buy lunch afterwards, $25 a head, whatever 300 times 25 is. And then, et cetera, et cetera. They might bring family and friends who stay in the town and spend money. So in terms of appetite for, that sort of stuff, it's definitely driven by the councils and tourism bodies first. And I think as the coverage improves around the gravel cycling, then we'll start to see more and more sponsors get on board and throw a bit more money at it.
Yeah, that would be really exciting. Do you think we'd ever get to a point where we'd be sort of attracting international talent to come out to Australia to race? I mean, I know that's a little bit down the track, but
it's happening though. It's 2026. The World Gravel Championships is in Nannup, in WA. Everyone is going to come over, 21 plus nations. It's Vanderpool. I'm going to Nannup this weekend. We've got the Tour of Margaret River happening. It's actually the Tour of Nannup. And, I'm making sure I grab all the gravel KOMs because all of those riders are coming in 2026. And I'm sure those who can in 2025 and maybe even the back end of 2024, those who can, and it's easy for them to travel over to Australia for a holiday during their off-season, talking to pro riders here.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you come and test out some of the gravel racing here in Australia a year or two before? Because, as we've seen this year already, the second year of the World Championships for gravel, the
huge,
real professionals are turning up with proper bikes, everything. They're not just going the night before, oh, yeah, I'll race the Gravel World Champs, sure. They're giving it some thought. So I think we'll start to see preparation from the professional riders. And that, with the World Champs being 2026 in Australia, that would involve, I think, some riders coming across and just sussing out some of our stuff.
Yeah, it was huge to see how much growth had happened in that World Championship event just in 12 months, wasn't it? It was.
Did you see the video, Tristan? The one that Payson put up?
Oh, I don't know if I saw Payson's. I think
on
I saw
YouTube. Payson McClavine, that he won Unbound 2020. Yeah. He put up the GoPro video. Mr. Earl, what are you doing? He's about to bring down. It's like Payson McClavine, I think that's how you say it, winner of Unbound 2020, 2021. But type that in on YouTube and you watch his World Championships footage. It's the first 25 minutes because, it's on a 4K GoPro. There's no battery life. It is insane, but a great advertisement of how crazy the World Champs will be.
Really exciting. I think there's going to be a really big build up to that event, as you say, 2026. So, exciting times for gravel racing in Australia. So, just back to the Dirty Warrny. If you're keen to get involved, not too late to register. I think the entries close on the 5th of November. So depending on when I get this one out, you might have a couple of days left to jump online and sign away your life. Get involved if you're keen.
Yeah. And you can also, anyone who signs up now actually goes into the draw to win 2 sets of reserve wheels. Like these elite, they're the wheels that Cervelo make. Kind of like Roval with Specialized. It's their home brand. 2 sets of gravel wheels from reserve and also a Grip Sport bike rack. So there's 3 huge prizes there and you just have to enter. So there's a lot of incentive. And if you're on the fence, the race is just easy to go to. It's easy to go to. There's 4 trucks for all the feed stations and they're numbered. So you go, I've got all 4 of my bags from each feed station. You put them in the truck before the stage at the start when you get your numbers. Great, easy. That your bags are going to the right one. And then when the next day, stay over in Warrnambool, spend some dollars there, go to the pub, enjoy a good time at the village. The next day, transfer buses back and they take your bikes. You just get on the bus, be a vegetable because you've cooked yourself the day before and you're back to your car and then you can go home. It's a real easy logistical organisation for the race. So don't sit on the fence. Just bloody enter. Because if I was living in Victoria, which I'm not, I'd be signing up big time, even though I'm going to be there.
Yeah, you never know. Like if this gets bigger and bigger, there might be an Unbound situation, sort of what they've got over in the US, where it's hard to get an entry to events like this. So, get in now and say you were there at the start. So. Very good. Jethro, thanks very much for coming on. Really appreciate your inside line on the Dirty Warrny and keen to see what you can pump out for next week's big event.
Thank you. Thanks, Tristan. Appreciate that. And we'll keep listening to your podcast. You're doing some great work, mate.
Cheers. And if you're keen for some racer interviews, get onto the Press Room podcast as well and check out Jethro's work. Jethro, thanks very much.
Thank you.